Okay. All right. Make sure this is updated. This one might have been my fault. I got a new phone, and I went through, and I had to do my restream permissions. And I'm wondering while I was doing that if I copy and pasted something into my profile, but I should be up and running. Let me know if you can hear me. And sorry about the late start. Again, that might be my fault. Alrighty, so I'll make sure I'm up and running here. Hey, you guys hear me okay? Testing, testing. Yeah, looks like my mic's up. Okay. Cool. All right, well, again, sorry about the late start. Let's get started. And, oop, hold on. Can't use ZBrush without my tablet. Alrighty. So, we're going to start with, if you haven't seen it yet, let me go ahead and load this up. So we got my YouTube channel, and we got Pixelogic YouTube channel. On Pixelogic YouTube channel, we just had the ZBrush Summit. And if you go to, where are we at? Pixelogic ZBrush. So here's Pixelogic's YouTube channel, which people on YouTube are already there. And they have the live streams all up and running. Specifically, the one we're going to be going over today is using ZBrush to facilitate smarter production with certain affinity. That is my live stream. I'll go ahead and link it to you just in case you want to watch it. Let's see, share. Yep, copy, and paste. Awesome. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. As far as questions go, I'm going to have a window open that I can, let me go ahead and close that one, that I can take notes here. I'm going to hit all of my demo material that I have in my presentation here, and then, you know, if you have questions, just let me know. If you want me to go deeper into something, or if you want to see maybe a different method, I can certainly do that. So let me say streaming topics, got a little Google Doc, and that'll be up and running, ready to go. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Sorry about starting late. You know how it goes. I didn't stream it all last month, so, you know, a little rusty. So, using ZBrush to facilitate sort of production, let's go through here, blee blah blue, and you know, this type of stuff at the sketch refine. In fact, speaking of this, if you want to see me kind of go through this process on my YouTube channel, if you go to playlists here, you can go down here to where it says load more. And then way down here, the ZBrush mech helmet concept, I have a playlist for this stuff, and the concept sketching down here. This stuff is pretty old, but it's still pretty relevant. You know, it's a lot of clay brush and just kind of getting in there. In fact, you know, we can just like demo this stuff. So for example, if we just hit Control N and we go into hide, and okay, my wacom set up good. For example, if we go into load tool here, and we say, go to my streaming. So I've been streaming on my channel, Pavlovich on Twitch, and then Pixelogic's channel, ZBrushLIVE.com, for a while. And way back in the day, we started on that channel, the ZBrush Female here. So we'll go to high res. We'll go all the way down here to ZBrush Female 001. So this is when we were doing, just kind of blocking out. We were kind of doing some anatomy sculpts here. So just taking a skeleton and kind of blocking in our muscles here. And then eventually, we got to the point where we started the tech suit. So we had her base body kind of dialed in. So if I alt tap her here, here's the base body that we're working with. And then on top of here, we just start concepting in a sculpt here. So you can see here where I'm just going through and sculpting. So, you know, we'll go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and delete this. So we have a base body. And like I said before, you know, if you have one thing selected, and actually if I turn all this stuff on, you can see, you know, we'll be covering this stuff too, like how to do shirts and pants and things like that. But you can select one object here, and you can go to your subtool menu, and you can do delete other, and that'll just go ahead and delete everything out of your scene except for what you're working on. So if you just want a concept sculpt, sometimes what I'll do is I'll duplicate this off, and then I'll go down here to our deformation menu, and we're going to go to inflate. It'll say -1, and that'll just deflate it. So if I go into solo mode here, your solo button may be way down here. If you want more information on how to set up your custom interface and do hotkeys and stuff, which I use all the time, I'll link you to that real quick. We'll go to our playlists, and then maybe not way down. Well, maybe it is way down. Intro to ZBrush Part 2. The first couple videos in here, hotkeys and interface and custom menu, all of that'll walk you through kind of getting that set up. So my rule of thumb is if you're going to use something all the time, like brush strokes. So for example, I got my standard brush stroke here, so we can use a standard brush. If I want to go to clay brush, I can hit Alt-C for my clay brush. I can go to clay buildup, or clay tubes. I can go to trim dynamic, and I can go to H polish. I can go to inflate. I can go to my Zmodeler brush. I can go to my custom menu. You can assign a custom menu to a hotkey. So now you just got like a floating little marking menu like you would have in Maya. So very, very quick access to things you use all the time. Let's go ahead and undo all that. Speaking of that, and hotkeys and then clay buildup here. Trying to think. There was something else I wanted to say about that, and it just left my mind. I apologize again. It's one of those days. Make sure I'm catching up here. What's the easiest way to make a hole? I would use Dynamesh or live booleans, which we'll get to that in a bit. But let me jot that down here. So we got our object here. We want a concept. And we can just start concepting. Now the reason why I deflate her a little bit, and I'm going to go in here, so let's see this align cursor to surface. As you're sculpting, it's okay if you don't mind that little flip-flop that this cursor is doing, you can leave that on. I prefer to go to Preferences, Edit, turn off Align Cursor to Surface. It doesn't affect the abilities of the brush or anything. It's just a visual thing. While I'm sculpting, I don't need to see it. I don't need to see the plane changes of my object. But if you like that, just feel free to leave it on. So now one thing you can do, of course, is you can go through here and you can just sculpt. And because I deflated it, if I go into transparency mode here, they're going to see I'm just slightly deflated a copy of it. So it looks like I'm sculpting new geometry, but in reality, I'm just sculpting on a little piece underneath. It just kind of gives me a visual representation of what's going on here. So that's one way you can do that. So you can go through here and you can just kind of concept sculpt with your clay brush, with your clay buildup here. So you can go through here and kind of build up any forms you would want. And just, concept like this. Of course, you can also keep Dynameshing. So if you don't know what Dynamesh is, we can go out of edit mode, hit Control-N. We can grab a cylinder here, go into edit mode. So this is a primitive here. So if we want to initialize this primitive, we can go down here and we can change our H divides and V divides. You can taper the top if you want to. And then once you're done with initializing this primitive, you can go to Make Polymesh 3D. Now it's sculptable. So we can go through here and we can sculpt. And you can now go in here to Geometry, Dynamesh, and I'll usually turn off Blur, turn off Project, and those hit Dynamesh. And now you're going to see it gives me all new geometry. So as I'm going through here and I'm moving stuff around, you can see the polygons have a tendency to get very squished and twisted and get very kind of non-sculpty. All you got to do is Control Drag if your Dynamesh is on, and then it'll go ahead and remesh, re-Dynamesh those objects there. So yeah, it's Dynamesh. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You got Sculptris Pro as well. You can use Dynamesh and Sculptris Pro at the same time if you want. But generally, I use just one or the other. And when I'm just blocking stuff out, I'll use Dynamesh, generally speaking. So anyway, we're going through here. You can also, you can go in here and you can stamp alphas. So I have, under my brushes here, hard surface, alphas. I converted a bunch of alphas into 3D objects. So now I can go through here and I can swap out these on the fly. This is all done in ZBrush 4R8. This I shouldn't say was done in ZBrush 4R8. These type of brushes came out with ZBrush 4R8. If you want to see exactly how to do these, I will link you to my ZBrush 4R8 What's New playlists. And if you scroll down, you're going to see creating mixing 2D and 3D alpha brushes, multi-alpha brushes from images, that kind of stuff. So that's what you're going to want to look for there. Hey, Harry from Indonesia. Thanks for showing up. How can you center imported FBX meshes to center to World ZBrush without moving it manually? So this one I can answer real quick, I think. So let me put this on my streaming topic just in case. We'll get to that in a second. So yeah, you got these alphas here. You can go through and drag these out. Of course, you can drop the Z intensity down. And if the surface is too rough, and again, this is just concepting. So I'm just going through here and trying to get my ideas out. I'm not trying to do refined work right now. So just going through here and kind of playing around. If you do want more of a refined surface, you can go through here. You can smooth it out. You can also go into your H polish brush, B. If you type in B, that brings up your brush menu. H narrows it down to the H brushes. And you see these little orange things up here. That's P, so HSP in this case, and usually it's just BH as the H polish brush because you don't normally have other brushes in here with H, but since I loaded up a new one that did have H, that one got selected. So you can go through here and you can use H polish here. If you hold down Alt with H polish, you can actually polish out to a surface. If you let go of Alt, it'll polish down. So I usually hold down Alt and then let go of Alt intermittently to kind of get these type of shapes here. And H polish, of course, is going to respect your edges. If you want to see more on that, you can go in here to samples and you can see preserve edge is set. If I go in here to, like, say, trim dynamic, you're going to see preserve edge gets set to 1. And my H polish brush is set to 30. So always go in and look at your brush settings. Samples is a good place to do that, as well as modifiers, just to kind of see what kind of, and also stroke settings for your brushes under modifiers here. There's a lot of interesting things that ZBrushes can do. You can make your own. You can download your own. If you do download your own, you can throw them in here in your brush folders. So for example, this location, and you can find this just by double clicking on any of these. You can just click a file, it'll show you where it is. So for example, if I go to C, Program Files, Pixelogic, ZBrush 2018, this is on a PC, I'm not sure about where it is on a Mac. You can go in here to ZBrushes, and anything you put in this folder will end up in your lightbox. So you can hit the comma key, it'll bring up your lightbox here. You can go to your brushes, you can put a new folder in there, you can double click that folder, all your ZBP files that you download or if you create, you can save them in this directory, it'll show up in your lightbox. If you save them into ZBrush 2018 Z Startup brush presets, like in here we have Smooth Stronger and Insert Multi-Mesh Base Primitives. That, when you restart ZBrush and you hit the B key, those will be added to your default brushes, so you can assign hotkeys to them. So if you use them all the time, put them in that folder. If you just use them every once in a while, just throw them into your lightbox and then come grab them whenever you need them. So for example, my base primitives, these are just little base primitives that I created. You can load those up, and these ones here, you can hit M as in Michael Pavlovich, and you can go through here and select whichever brush you want, or you can go up through here and you can cycle through here. The cycling's cool. So these are insert mesh brushes. So if I go through here and I'm like, okay, give me this shape here, and I want to go ahead and put that on there, it'll go through. If I hit W and then use these, it'll cycle through all the different shapes. And of course, you can go to brush, insert BI. There's a lot of different ones in here. So like, for example, we'll do industrial parts. And as we cycle through these, you're going to see these are industrial parts that you can use. So you can just insert whatever shapes you want. And because we have this dynameshed, if you hit Q to go back into draw mode, control drag, that'll unmask your object. I'm going to turn on polyframe here. If we control drag again, it's going to dynamesh those two surfaces together. Of course, you can do subtractive dynameshes here. So if I go back to my base primitives and we grab a cylinder, if we hold down Alt, that'll turn that dynamesh subtool white. So if I control drag again, that'll go ahead and punch a hole. So earlier, there was a question, how to make a hole in an object. So one of the ways, if we grab, you know what, let's grab a cube. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is just one. We'll go ahead and say make polymesh 3D. We'll use our gizmo. Gizmo is just W-E-R. You go into draw mode, and this is sculpting, and that's Q. And you can hover over anything in the ZBrush interface. It'll show you the hotkey, as well as if you hold down the control key, it'll give you even more information on that. So for example, I can go into draw mode. If I hit W, that'll go into gizmo mode. And if you'll notice that like move, scale, and rotate doesn't do anything to the gizmo because move, scale, and rotate by default is all through here. There is actually a plugin. you do a Google search for ZBrush plugins, go to the Pixologic Download Center, or just click on the ZBrush plugins link. Z-Color, if you saw the new, oh, I need to download this and try it out, the Friday presentation of the ZBrush Summit, they went over this a little bit, as well as this metal quotes and intersection masker. But if you scroll all the way down here, you're going to see there's a gizmo swapper. So this will allow you to use a, for move, scale, and rotate, it'll just have move, it'll just have scale, and it'll just have rotate. I like having all three, but if you don't, go download the gizmo swapper and install that. Your Z plugins will end up being over here. So in the Pixologic Download Center, at the very top, these are the ZBrush 2018 new ones that just came out. All of these plugins here are already pre-installed, but if you need to reinstall them, I guess you can get them here. And then all these ones down here were created by Pixologic employees, and you can install them. All you need to do to install them is you just click the download page. It'll give you a zip file. You can 7-zip those extracted files, and then again, just go to your C program files, Pixologic ZBrush 2018, Z startup, Z plug 64, and you're going to put your data folder in there, your Z script in there. You probably restart ZBrush to be the safest way to go. Then go to your Z plugins, and then you'll have all your new plugins. They'll be over here, and you can use them however you'd like. So anyway, we got this guy here, and what we're going to do is poke a hole through him. There's a lot of different ways to do this. One way is if you're using Dynamesh, like we were just talking about. Geometry, Dynamesh. I'll go ahead and turn off blur. So now we have this thing Dynameshed. If we go to BI Brush Insert Primitives, you can go through here and you can select one. You can also hit the M key, and we'll say Insert Cylinder. We can drag this out. If we drag out and then drag back in, it'll make it thinner. That's a feature. And if you start dragging out, you hold down Control, it'll snap it to your brush size. Also, if you drag one out and then you hit W and you hold down Control, it'll drag off a copy. Also, if you drag one out and you have your gizmo here, I'm going to hold down Alt and hit this Reset Orientation. If you want a lot more gizmo functionality, again, ZBrush 4R8, what's new? Gizmo, all about the gizmos, the first like 5 videos. I'll go ahead and link you guys to that again. And that'll show you all the gizmo stuff. But one cool thing with the gizmo is you can hold down Control, start dragging, let go of Control but keep dragging, and that'll go ahead and spit out these copies, like so. You can also use a ray mesh, which we'll get to in a bit, but we have this one here. So now, if I Control drag again, that's going to be an additive Dynamesh. If I undo that, and we just have this one sitting here, since it's its own polygroup, every time I drag out, it gives it a different polygroup here. So if I Control drag to unmask and then hold down Control Shift, I can isolate any one of these separate polygroups here. In fact, if we go to the polygroup menu and we do an auto groups, anything that's not vert welded, and these things aren't because they were just inserted right on top, those will get an all brand new polygroup here. So if I Control drag this, they're all going to additive Dynamesh. And what that means is they've been sucked together, they've been Dynameshed together, and now they're all part of one piece here. So if I undo this, to where they're all still separate pieces, and let's say we go Control Shift, isolate this one, and then under the Polygroups menu, so here's your Tool menu, and if you want it docked over here, you can double click these little dividers, and you can click these little white buttons to get rid of menus. You can grab any menu out of here, grab that white button and just throw it over here. You can hide the docking by double clicking it, open it up, and you're good to go. So Polygroups, there is a group as Dynamesh sub. If you click that, it's going to turn it white. So white Dynameshes subtract. So if I Control drag now, it still does an additive. So let's try this again. Let me just move this in real quick. It still wants to do additive. Let's go ahead and I'm going to hold down Control Shift, isolate this one. We'll go ahead and do Geometry, Modify Topology. And I always joke that I say this one way too much. Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. Now instead of going through and opening up all these menus, if you want to open up multiple menus, hold down Shift, and that'll allow you to open up multiple menus. And so that way you can have Modify Topology opened up, and then also like Crease menu if you want to. But you'll notice I have Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden in here because I use it all the time. And you see when I roll over it, it also rolls over it in my custom interface and in my usual interface. So let's do this again. If we go to BI Brush Insert Primitives, I'm going to hit M, grab a cylinder, drag that out, drag it back in to make it thinner, hit W, move that in, control drag again, it's additive. Let's go ahead and isolate this one. We will polygroup, group as Dynamesh sub, control drag again. Now it'll cut a hole through. And of course, when we do that, we can also make copies, and you can control drag and cut out multiple holes. So this is making holes using Dynamesh, one of many methods you can use. And I think that's it. You can also mix and match. So we go to brush, insert, industrial parts here, hit M, and we'll just grab some screws on here, control drag. It seems like it kind of breaks that Dynamesh sub functionality. So it might be easier. We have an object here. It's like, okay, I'm going to make these additive. Go ahead and make them additive. And then if I want to go to brush, insert, primitives, grab a cylinder. Now if I hold down Alt, it's going to flip the normals of that object. If you want to see both sides of the object, go all the way down here to display properties. And there's double. You can turn that on. You can also flip your normals, but in this case, we'll just turn on double temporarily so we can see it a little bit better. We'll move this into place. Control drag again, and now it'll cut out. So also, just really quick, you can also grab out a cylinder here. And you can see how this is automatically masked off. If you go into your brush settings and you scroll down here to auto masking, you're going to see by default auto mask mesh insert is turned on. So as you drag out a new mesh insert, everything else is going to stay masked. The reason it does that is so you can quickly go in here and manipulate the last object you drew. And then you can just Dynamesh everything together if you want to. So you're dragging that stuff out, you're making new insert mesh brushes. I think that's all right. I think that's all we need to cover on this stuff. I mean, there's a million, I mean, we can keep going on here, but I think you guys get it. We kind of went off on a kind of a long tangent when all we were really talking about was just doing concepting. And of course, you can use insert mesh brushes to concept. You can do subtractive. You can also go in here and use alphas to go through and start punching in. You can punch in this detail, and then hold down Alt and punch in this detail. And you might be thinking, well, if I'm putting in all this shape detail and stuff, how do I get like a nice sub-D version of this? Well, you can use ZRemesher sometimes. Sometimes you can go through and rebuild it. But at this stage, I'm not overly concerned about that. All I'm really concerned about, and in this case, if I want to cap these things, I'm just going to do a quick cylinder, throw them in here. Stick these in here, control drag, and again, I'm just getting very quick reads. I want to get my forms done. I'm not worried about like, how is this going to resurface? I don't care about that. I'm just going through here and making big form change decisions. Now, if I hold down Shift to smooth, you're going to see my Z intensity. Kind of takes a long time to smooth. Usually, when you're concepting and just doing your base mesh stuff, this Dynamesh resolution you can keep pretty low. And that way, the lower you keep the resolution, the faster it'll respond. But also, the it's not going to really be nice to kind of sculpt with, depending on the details you want. But again, if you're just getting your ideas out, I would suggest going low. If you do want to get a little bit more shape information or surface information, you can go into your Dynamesh resolution, which is over here. You can crank that up, and then drag, and that'll just increase that resolution that you're working on. So there's that. And you're just, again, getting your big reads. And of course, just like anything else, you can go through here, you can mask, you can pull these things in, you can use any of your brushes that you want to. You can use insert mesh brushes, you can insert mesh curve brushes, which we'll get to in a bit, just to kind of explore the different shapes that you want to use. Another one I like to use, Brush Insert Model Toolkit. If you kind of want to, it's at the M key, we'll grab this thing here. If you insert on either side, it'll insert to the right, to the left. If you start scaling, it's going to go way out and way in. If you don't want that, you want to scale on a local axis. Hit this L sim. That's your local symmetry. So now it'll scale along your local axis here. And if you just want one down the middle, just make sure the icons goes down the middle. Then control drag again. And now this is all stuck together. Oh, that's one thing I did want to mention. We stuck this one together because we want it to be all one continuous object. However, if you want to ever go in here and say we want separate handles for this over here, we can pop in some handles here and see how it's masked. Go over here to your subtool, split, and you can split this apart, split the groups. You can do any of these. I'm going to go to split unmask points. What that's going to do is split these handles off into its own subtool, and now I can hold down Alt, and I can tap the separate subtools I want to work on. So I usually don't go over here and start tapping. I usually just hit Alt and then just tap in my workspace here to start working. Cool. Okay, let me get caught up here. How did you texture the hair in ZBrush Summit female character? I didn't. Tony Reynolds did. We can talk a little bit on the hair creation. As far as the textures go, it was just, let me see. It was probably similar. I really don't know. I'd have to look at them. Let me, I made a note of that one. As far as like what texture went down the cards, I'm not exactly sure how that was made. How I normally make it, I can show you. Let me go to my, I got an image here. It's actually in my slides, but let me get a higher resolution version of it. You can zoom in a little bit. Drafts. Wrapex. Really? Come on. Bear with me. Let me chew this hair. Wow, did I totally get rid of it? Hold on. You know what? It might be my other account. Come on. There we go. Nope. All right, let me, let's go to my slides. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. Controlling curve, we're going to skip a lot. So here is where, so you can see this slide right here. Essentially what I do, and this is using Geoda Hair. We can also use ZBrush for this type of thing too. You have a plane here, and you just toss these curves down here. You can also use fiber mesh for this. You can bake out your fiber mesh to a plane, and you can have them wrap around each other, and you can just capture that as a both a height, an alpha, Z depth, and then also a texture. So you can go through here and you can paint root to tip if you'd like. Like if you want darker roots and lighter tips, you can go in through there and paint that, capture that, and apply that as your texture. We will go through this quite a bit later. Oh, speaking of, so, oh, thanks for the kind words, King's Letter. Awesome. Glad the videos are working out. I'm hoping to have some more video content coming out soon. We got about 45 minutes left today. So Snarl says, decimated something relatively thin. The decimation made the faces intersect each other. So, actually, that's a good point. Let me make. Oh, yeah, you always usually try to have double off. We'll get into this later when we start retopologizing with Z-spheres and stuff. It can sometimes throw you for a loop. But you can see here, see how we're getting very, very thin faces here. We can dynamesh this, and sometimes, like if I dynamesh this now, you're going to see it puts a hole there. If you want, you can go through here and you can do an inflate, and it'll inflate that hole together. You can also go through here and use something I call like spackle. So we can go through here and just grab a base primitive, hit W. Oh, that's another thing too. If, for whatever reason, if you want my custom interface, let's do this. And we'll do, sorry, I usually have these links ready to go. Here and here. So if you go to either my Gumroad page, and I'm not trying to sell you on anything, this is all free stuff I'm talking about, or my CubeBrush page, and you scroll down all the way to the Intro to ZBrush files, in here is my, if you want my hotkeys, they're in there if you want, and you can just read the text file of the hotkeys and see what I use if that's interesting to you, and you can make your own. And my custom interface is on there as well. There's instructions on how to install that. I don't know, it's up to you. But anyway, what you can do is you can throw in, what we're basically doing is we're putting a little sphere, and I'm using this sphere like a little glob of clay just to kind of fill in this bad area here. Control drag again, and now that's kind of worked out. You can go in here with your H-polish brush, and you can kind of make these surfaces a little bit nicer. Now, the reason that happens sometimes is like Snarl was saying, if you go through here and you have a thin object, so we'll grab a cube, make Polymesh 3D, we'll go ahead and thin this out. We'll go ahead and Dynamesh this. So we've got our Dynamesh object here. We're ready to start sculpting on it. So let's say, okay, I'm going to grab my clay brush and I'll make it really big, and I'm going to go through here and I'm going to start making like some sort of button. And hold down Alt and push this in, and then now we've got this kind of shape, and I control drag, and it's like, oh, what happened? Everything's splitting apart, and now it's like, oh, I don't want to have to spackle that. That's kind of a pain in the butt because I'd have to go in here and grab like a cylinder and try and fit it into here. And actually, if I was making that shape, I probably would use Zmodeler, but now you've got to kind of go through here and do something like this. And we'll get to how to get rid of that faceting in just a second. But in order to avoid this, we go back to our plane here, and we're using our clay brush. And as you start sculpting with your clay brush, it's going to be pulling in through the other side. That's what's making that happen. So for all these brushes over here, turn on backface masking. And now when you're sculpting here, it's going to leave the back faces alone. It automatically masks anything that's away from the camera, like so. If you have that off, it's going to suck through, and then you're going to get that. So that's one way to avoid that. I suppose another way to avoid that, if you don't have backface masking on, is you can hold down Control-Shift, hold down Alt, and that'll hide those back faces, so you can manually go through and you can hide those back faces, and then hold down Control-Shift and tap to bring everything else back. And now when you Control drag to Dynamesh, it'll update. That's another way to do it. And of course, manually you can mask. You can hold down Control and mask the back. Oops. Hold down Control, mask the back. Control tap to invert that mask if you want to. All of this is in your masking menu, and all of these things, it's like, I want to mask. I want to Control tap to invert that mask. I want to Control tap here to blur it. I want to Control Alt tap to tighten it up. Or you can just do this. You can also do grow mask and then shrink mask. So you can, let's do a sharpen and then shrink and then grow, sharpen. You can get shapes like that. So and there's a lot of implications you can do with masking. I don't want to make this too much of an intro course. I'm going to have intro videos coming out pretty soon. But anyway, to avoid that, make sure you have backface masking on. Let's go back to our character here, and let's keep moving forward with actually making some progress on my slides. I didn't want to make this into a everything thing here. So anyway, we're concepting here. We've got our concept sketch, and at all of these points, we're hitting our one-button solution, insert infinity, and throwing these into Engine, and copying weights and throwing it into game, so that we're running around and play testing all of these stages here. A couple of different examples of just really quick ways. So let's create this-ish. So, and again, we're just keeping it simple. We're not doing anything too super fancy. So I'm going to go back into ZBrush here, and let's say we want to do a pair of pants. So we've got our subtool here. I'm going to go ahead and say this is our armor. This is all fine. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tap. So while you have something selected, if you turn off the eyeball, it's going to turn off the eyeball. Or if you hold down Shift and turn off the eyeball, it'll turn off the eyeball for everybody. If you hold down Shift and turn it back on, all the eyeballs pop on. If you just want to turn the eyeball off for this one, you can just tap it, or you can tap the nameplate. You can also just turn these eyeballs off. So now this one has the eyeball off, but you can still see it because it's selected. If you don't have it selected, now it disappears. So we got our base body again. So for example, like we were doing in our slides, let's talk about how to demo this pair of pants, and we'll also do the shirt as well. It's pretty easy. So I want to make a pair of pants, so I'm going to hold down Control. We're going to go to Mask Lasso, and we're just going to drag right across here, and that's where the pants are going to go. I'm going to hold down Control and then Mask Pin. And if you want to, kind of fine-tune where this is going to go, you can also use Mask Curve, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's where I want our pants to go. So now ZBrush is going to help us out with this. A lot of different ways to make a polygroup out of here. You can hit Control W, and that'll make a polygroup. Let's make that more obvious. So there's a polygroup here. If you want it to slice through here, and sometimes that's useful, you can go down here to Geometry, Edge Loop, and you can do Edge Loop Mask Border, and that puts like a cleaner line through your mask here. So I'm going to actually do that. But one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this off first, because I always like to be able to go back to my base mesh here. And then now I have this duplicate with just her pants. I'm going to go into solo mode, so I'm just looking at her, or you can just turn off the eyeball for her original base pants. So with that masked, again, go down here to Geometry, Edge Loop Mask Border, and now we have where pants are going to go. So Control-Shift-Tap that polygroup here, and if you don't like seeing these lines, but you like seeing your polygroups, just turn off this little line button right there, and now you can just see that, or alternatively, you can turn off Fill, and then that gets rid of the colors. So we'll keep Fill on, turn Line off, hold down Control-Shift, again, Geometry, Modify, Topology, Delete Hidden, and now we've got our pants. Now you can go through here, you can just Control-Drag, that'll re-Dynamesh, the Dynamesh is still activated, so that'll go ahead and cap her off for you. By default, Dynamesh runs a Geometry Modify Topology Close Holes operation first. If you want to do that manually, you can just go here, hit Close Holes, and then Dynamesh, it'll do the exact same thing. You can still isolate these faces. And if we turn her base body back on, you can go through here and just start concepting out her pants. However, when I'm doing cloth sculpting, what I like, let's undo back to where we just had our regular geometry here. What I like to do is have subdivision history, even for just a sketch, even if it's just a garbage throwaway sculpt. It's simple enough just to go through here, go to Geometry, go down here to ZRemesher, and I have X symmetry turned on. That's important. I'm going to say target polygon count of 5 is fine. We're at 156,000 now. You can also say half if you want to. The adaptive size I'm going to crank down to 0. The lower this is, the more even your quads are going to be. The higher it is, the more it looks at your edge flow and tries to build in extra edges. So for faces and stuff, I'd probably keep this up a little bit. For just what I'm doing here, I'm just going to drop that down to 0, and we'll hit ZRemesh. Now again, we have X symmetry turned on, so it's going to be symmetrical across the x-axis. And when this is done, you're going to see I get new geometry. And if you ever want to, you can also hold down Alt, and you can just ZRemesh from this point as well. So we can just hit ZRemesh again. It'll give me a new topology, and it goes a little bit faster because it's only evaluating these fewer polygons. If you hold down Alt and hit ZRemesher, that'll give you a new midline algorithm. So you can see I get a little bit of a different result there. And I can also now at this point go to half and hit ZRemesher. And you can hold down Alt if you want a different algorithm. And just keep hitting that, and it's going to keep going further and further and further lower res. So here's my game res. It's not really a game res. You can use it as a game res. But I'm just going to use it as kind of a base. So at this point, I can go to BZM. That's my Zmodeler brush. You can hover over a face, hit the space bar. We can Q-mesh, or we can extrude polygroup all, or all polygons in this case, and we can just extrude thickness out of here, or you can extrude thickness in. However, you're going to see when we extrude it in, everything looks fine, but let's say we go down here to deformation, and we want to inflate these pants a bit. And if I go in here and do a positive inflate, you're going to see it shrinks, and if I do a negative inflate, it grows. That means if we go down here to display properties, we have double turned on. Turn double off, and you hit flip. You can see, with double turned off, you can see my vertex normals, my normals are flipped. So we can flip those back, and now inflate and deflate will behave as you would expect. The reason that happened, we go back to our original base mesh here, we had double turned on for her under display properties. So try and keep that turned off. It'll save you some headaches down the road. But anyway, we got a pair of pants on her. And again, with my Zmodeler brush, if I go through here and I do an extrude or a Q-mesh with, say, polygroup all, now it's just going to extrude those individual polygroups here. I can also do a single poly, for example, and just pull one out. However, if you do a Q-mesh or extrude polygroup all, and you start extruding, you see how it adds an extra edge loop. If you don't want to do that, you just want to pull along the surface normals, just hold down Shift, and that'll kind of inflate along the surface normal. So now we can go through here, and we can just kind of inflate this out. Now, remember, if I do Dynamesh this together, and I am going to sculpt with it, and you're sculpting and you're Dynameshing, remember, these are thin meshes, so you need to have backface masking turned on. This isn't global. If I go through here to my standard brush, it's off. If I go to my trim dynamic, it's off. You can go through here and save these brushes with backface masking on, and then go to Brush, Save As. And if you remember, if we go to ZBrush 2018, C Program Files, Pixelogic ZBrush 2018, ZBrushes, if you save it in here, those are your lightbox brushes. When you hit the comma key, that brings up the lightbox. That's where those go. If you go to the Startup, Brush Presets, that goes into, that copies the brush. So right now we're doing Trim Dynamic. It'll save it as a Trim Dynamic copy, and then you can use this as a separate Trim Dynamic. If you want to save over the existing Trim Dynamic and you want to have backface masking turned on, you go ZBrush 2018, ZData, Brush Presets, and then if you save over these, so under here, QRS Trim Dynamic, that will save over the real default ZBrush. Now, if you're going to do this, I would suggest copy, do a copy, Control C, Control V, and then keep a copy in there just so you always have your regular brush presets to go back to, just in case something goes wrong. But that's how you can save backface masking with these brushes. So just remember that's a thing. Now, if you want to, this is how I would normally do it. So we go back here. I'm going to undo all the way back to where we just did our ZRemesh here, and I'm going to go back here. I already know it's going to be a problem, so I'm going to go down here. I'm going to turn off double. So now we have this. Now I don't want to just start sculpting. I mean, you can if you want to. You can like sculpt and then hit Control D to subdivide, and that's just adding subdivision history to our object here. But single-sided objects in ZBrush, and when we get into processing tools later for game reses, those just, they drive me up the wall. So I try to avoid doing that. And you can always do polygroups on single-sided, so if you ever want to get back to just a single-sided mesh, you can hold down Control-Shift and isolate it from your caps, and you're good to go. So, for example, instead of just going through here and extruding or Q-meshing out, what I'm going to do is hover over an edge. We're going to go to Close, Convex Hull. Now, if you do a Convex Hull, you can go through here, and you can like do a convex hull like this. You can pull out an interactive elevation, but generally speaking, I'll just close it like this, and I'll go down here and close it. If you don't care about the polarized cap here, you can just do a regular old concave hole. That's not a mirrored operation, and you can even skip using Zmodeler and just go to Geometry Modify Topology, Close Holes, and then I like to do a quick Geometry Modify Topology Mirror and Weld just to get that mirrored geometry across to both sides. Interestingly enough, this actually does a pretty good job of giving you decent topology. If you ever use this, you can go through here and you can use collapse with your Zmodeler brush. You can go through here and you can kind of collapse certain edges, and you can also go through here and just delete edge. So you can go through here, and if you go through and you start deleting these edges, you'll notice that it actually gives you pretty reasonable topology through here. So if you hold down Shift and start smoothing, you're going to see, okay, that's actually not bad. That's, you know, you've got quads in here. You've got some triangles that you can go through and collapse if you want to. But in a pinch, if you want some automatic topology, you can use that close holes operation, go through, delete some edges, and it might give you a reasonable result. So now that we have this, again, we want to inflate these pants out just a tiny bit. So extrude polygroup all, hold down Shift to pull along that surface normal, and now we've got a pair of pants on her. And at this point, if we hit divide, we have the smooth modifier turned on. If we hit divide, you're going to see it's going to average those vertices. I like to keep those a little bit tighter, at least to begin with. So we're going to go to Crease, PG. That'll crease my polygroup edges. So now when I hit divide, that'll keep that nice and crispy up here. So we can divide again. And at any point, if we want to, if we turn on our polyframe, we're going to see this dotted line means that edge is creased. If we want to turn that off, we can do uncrease all. And now when I hit divide, it'll go ahead and uncrease it. And because we had pretty good subdivisions already, it gives me a nice bevel along that edge. Now the reason I like doing this with cloth is I can always go down to subdivision level 1 again, because now we have subdivision history. And we'll get into dynamic subdivisions later. Those are very, very useful. You can now go through here and start sculpting. And now, because we're sculpting, I like to do my main primary forms at lower subdivision levels. So you can go through here and you can like use your standard brush. And then when we get into details like gene puckering, and you can also use your inflate brush if you want to do a quick inflate pass just to make sure it's covering her skin. Go through and inflate. Now, because we capped it, I don't need to worry about inside faces. They're not. It's not a thin mesh. It's just a very. It's a capped mesh here. So you can go through here and you can step through your subdivision history or hit Control D, and now we're able to go through and start sculpting. Now you're going to see by default, if I go up here to the stroke menu, lazy mouse is turned on. It's a lazy radius of 1 for my standard brush. If I crank this up, you're going to see that line that comes out. That makes it a very smooth stroke. You can toggle lazy mouse on and off by tapping the L key. So if you want it off, just tap L. If you want it on, you can tap L. And if you want to make that more or less smooth of a stroke, just go up here to your stroke menu and then crank this lazy radius down to something that's a little bit more palatable. So anyway, that's you can go up here to this undo history and you can just drag backwards. And that'll go through your undos. And now you can just go through here and you can smooth, you can inflate, and you can just sculpt your primary and secondary forms. Now, you may also notice on my YouTube channel, I have a Marvelous and ZBrush Quick Start. If you're proficient in Marvelous and you have avatars, you can even export this as an avatar. And templates already set up, you can very quickly create, even for concepts, very, very quick cloth instead of going through here and sculpting it. But because we're on Pixologic's channel, I'm not going to go into that just yet, but it's fairly simple, and you can go to my YouTube channel if you want to see more on that. And but again, because we're just concepting here, and I did control drag and I did Dynamesh, so you're going to have to be careful. If you don't want to Dynamesh anymore, I mean, you can if you want to, but in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh, turn that off, and now I don't have to worry about control dragging and accidentally Dynameshing. So we can go through here, and again, details and stuff like this I'm not going to do just yet. I'm just doing primary reads here, like so, and then you know, the long forms, and then where it bunches around the knee and the leg, and depending on what type of cloth you're making, that's where a good reference comes in. And even if it's just you wearing a pair of jeans that you take with your phone and just take pictures in the round, it's very, very useful. Or use Marvelous Designer, or you know, learn how to sculpt cloth. That's not my favorite thing in the world to do, but you can start sculpting your primary and secondary forms. You can continue to subdivide, so hit Control D or just hit this divide key, and now you're going through and you're sculpting. And now at this point, you can start putting in details here. You can start like adding, looks like our clay tubes brush lost our alpha there. You can go through here and you can start adding this type of detail. And again, the higher res you go, the more detail you'll be able to get. So now, if I was doing this detail at like subdivision level 3, and then I went up, you're going to have to like keep cleaning it up every subdivision level, and that's not ideal. So that's another reason why I like to have subdivision history when I'm sculpting cloth, because I can always step down and I can refine my primary and secondary forms, and then I can go all the way back up. And then I can go in here, we'll use like the Damien standard with the laser radius up just a little bit. You can go through here and you can start cutting seams. You can also hit the comma key, go in here to brush, and we'll do, what am I looking for here? Weave. No, I'm looking for stitches. So with the stitches, like this one for example, you can take this alpha and you're going to roll this alpha through your object here. And if you go to stroke menu, you're going to see roll is turned on, so it's actually rolling this alpha as we go. So you can make stitch alphas, you can just roll along your object. You can make jeans puckering, which we'll get to. Let me make sure I make a note of that here. So all that good stuff. So again, this is just quick concept-y stuff. So if I go back here, you're going to see this pair of pants is exactly how I made that, just really quickly. These little tube pants over here, hold on. Kill that. I can go through here, and just like I was doing before, I can duplicate this off. And in fact, with this duplicate, if I go down to subdivision level 2, you can see I already have concentric lines on here, or even subdivision level 1. So I can do delete higher. I can hover over an edge here. I can go to polygroup, polyloop, and then just tap. You can tap Alt if you want to cycle through polygroups here, but I'm just going to grab, say, these 3, isolate them, delete hidden. Let's go ahead and just do a close convex hull. We'll go ahead and cap and cap. Control Shift tap these polygroup. It's not going to do it. Let's go to polygroups, group by normals, and then again it's not mirrored, so geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld, and then we'll do another under our geometry crease menu, crease PG, and now we can hit D for dynamic subdivisions, and that turns on our dynamic. We'll get more into this in the hard surface stuff, but if you want to, you can hit Control D and start sculpting on this, or even better, since it is going to be kind of like maybe a ribbed surface. Let's do this. Let's go Insert, Single Edge Loop, hold down Alt. We'll get rid of these. We'll go to Insert Multiple Edge Loops, and we'll pop these in here. And now what we can do is we can go to Inset, Polygroup All Region, and that'll go ahead and inset all of these faces. You can tap these faces to inset them as well. And now we go through here to QMesh, Polygroup All. You can just QMesh this out, QMesh this out. We'll hit D for dynamic, and now we have like a ribbed surface here. And then you can go through here with your Move Brush or your Gizmo brush. Make sure you have LSIM turned on if you're going to use your Gizmo. And now we have like a little ribbed surface like that. So that's one way to accomplish that kind of look. Let me catch up on my notes here. Which pen tablet is best? All I've ever used for tablets is my Wacom Intuos Pro Medium. So that's all I can suggest. I have used Cintiqs in the past. When I worked at Sony, I used the Cintiq. I prefer my tablet just because I'm faster and I don't get arm fatigue or leaning over fatigue that I get on the Cintiq. So, yeah, you can ask me a question about UV. Sorry about that, Imperial. When are the new changes for ZBrush going to come out? That's a good question. If you want to know more about that, or at least what they are, let me link you to that real quick. So YouTube, go to Google the Pixelogic YouTube channel. And in here, also in here, if you scroll down, ZBrush past live broadcast, here's my using ZBrush to facilitate smart production. If you want to watch that, you can watch that. Also, there should be exclusive first look into ZBrush development with Pixelogic. If you click on this one, Joseph Drust and Paul Gavery go over for an hour all the new stuff. There's going to be folders. You guys excited about folders? New UV stuff. So I'm going to link you guys to this video, and you can check out all the new stuff. I don't know when it's going to come out. Haven't gotten to play with it, but cool stuff. Yeah, it's 7:41 a.m. here. It's not. This is really the only time I can stream. I've got about 20 minutes left today. Sorry I got a late start. So Tuesday mornings I usually stream on Pixelogic's channel here, where you guys are at, and then Thursday mornings I'll be on my channel, Pavmike, Twitch, and then on my YouTube channel is where it'll get backed up. So, can you show us how to add a detail on entire object, like for example, wool on a hat? Yes, that'll be surface noise. We'll get to that. We can get to that now. I don't know that later on is going to be any better of a time, so let me go ahead and make sure I add that to my streaming topics here. You know what? We'll do Gene's puckering and we'll do surface noise now. And it does work without UVs, but I wouldn't suggest it. I am going to stream again this Thursday. Question, hey Mike, since your Gumroad tutorials and have your workflows for polishing hard surface changed? We'll go over that a little bit in this live stream and this series, but not really. I think I use a lot more box modeling, which when we get to the mech, we'll talk a lot about that. Do Game Res pants have interiors? Not usually, unless you're going to see them. Usually you just cap them, and then when you're waiting, it gets weird. You can have occlusion texture, so you can like occlude out the base body, or you can have a deleted version of the base body so it doesn't interact with the pants. It gets into very production-y stuff, which isn't ZBrush oriented necessarily. Also try Lazy Mouse, Morph Target, Chisel Brush to get really clean line work without overlapping the corners. Yeah, if you want, I'm not going to get into that just now, but if, again, on the ZBrush 408, what's new, if you go down here to the Chisel Brush, I talk all about the brush settings in order to make the Chisel Brush, Chisel Continuous Stroke down here, number 21. Check that out. And that'll get you set up there. Is it possible to keep the size of the stitch with a bigger step size? Yeah, I think so. Let's give that a shot. So stitch here, and then oops, we're rolling this out, and they're kind of rolling out at that distance. So go in here to stroke, and there's a roll distance. If you crank that down to 0.5, they'll stitch together closer together. Oh, I'm having trouble with English this morning. And then if you roll this out, that's like say 2.8, they'll be farther apart. Now it is dragging the alpha. So your roll distance is what's doing that. If you turn off roll, that'll just drag these alphas out. You can go through here with it. In this case, if your roll is turned off, your lazy step is what's controlling this. So we turn this lazy step to 1. We're not rolling through anymore, but we are just kind of stepping through. So in this case, you can use this alpha. It's not getting quite as nice a result as the roll, but you can go through here with your lazy step, and you can make them lazy step closer together or lazy step further apart. And that way it doesn't like distort your alpha as you're rolling. But yeah, you're also not getting quite as nice as a result, but you can play with those settings. But I would suggest keeping your roll on and this lazy step down, and that'll give you. Now you're going to see I can go to small to big to small. If you don't want that, because I'm using a tablet, if you don't want that, you can use your mouse, I think, and that'll keep it all consistent. You can also go in here to your brush settings, and you can say tablet pressure. Right now I'm using global settings, smooth brush modifiers. Let me see if I remember how to do this here. I do it with my chisel brush. Let's see, orientation. That should be right. Let me go to my. Okay, yeah, okay. So, for example, my chisel brush, global settings is turned off, so you can go in here. So let's say we're using our chisel brush here to cut through a very precise line. But you can see I'm going from thin to thick to thin. If I don't want that, I can say turn use global settings off. I can crank this. If I open up this size, you can just tap on it, then that'll bring out this graph. You can make it all squared off. So you can just go through here. And you know what, I'll just go ahead and show you. The chisel brush here, it'll go through and it'll cut through as long as you don't lift up. However, if you do lift up and you cut across, it's going to do that. So what you want to do is go down here to your morph targets, store a morph target. You can drag this out, and then as you drag over, it'll cut across no problem. Another cool thing is if you go to your stroke menu, and you're going to see a lazy snap. Let's turn our lazy radius down. That'll just give us a little bit less of a little red line behind it. And then if we turn lazy snap up, you're going to see we can drag this out. And then with lazy snap on, you don't even have to go to the end. You can kind of go out here, and it'll snap back to where you last had your stroke. So it'll automatically start where you left off. So you can get very, very hard surface results. As well as if you hold down shift as you start going through here, you can actually snap it to a distance. Now you're going to see it kind of stops a little bit before it gets to the end of my stroke there. So if you go to stroke, change your lazy radius down to a smaller number, and then as you use that, it'll go ahead and snap all the way to your cursor. And then you can use snap and lazy snap. This one's a little bit tougher to go ahead, and you can hold down shift. If you don't like holding down shift and getting this line, you can tap L. That'll turn lazy mouse off, and now you can just hold down shift, and that'll just snap it to, you know, hold down shift and go straight up and down. I like to use this one, so let's go out of edit mode. Let's go ahead and grab our trusty cube, make polymesh 3D, hit W, and we'll go ahead and dynamesh this. So we're going through here, and we're chiseling. Let's just use the standard brush here. So we're going through here, and we're sculpting. If we have lazy mouse turned off, by tapping L, We can just turn that off. You can just hold down Shift and it'll snap it to a 45-degree angle, or up and down, or left and right. If you have lazy mouse turned on and you hold down Shift, it'll snap it using these lines. So whichever one you like to use. If you do like using the one without, you can hold down Alt and you can hold down Shift. If you like using the one without lazy mouse, what you can do is you can hit W, hit Y to go out of gizmo mode, and now you have your transpose line. This is old school ZBrush, but if you want to match an exact line, you can drag a line out. And let's say I want to make a line exactly this way. You can hold down Control, tap this little white end there. It'll move your camera, so you can hit Q, and then hold down Shift, and then you can just move a line right across where that transpose line was. So that's a little trick. Yeah, so when you import an FBX, let me see if I have an FBX to import, or really any mesh you import, and let's say it's not on world center, but you want it to be. If you go to geometry, position, you're going to see X, Y, and Z position. Just take that X position and zero it out, Y, zero it out, and it should drop it right into your ZBrush 000 world position. You can, if you have an object over here and you hold down Alt and you go to Unmatched Mesh Center, or underneath masking here, we now have a new Go to Unmatched Mesh Center button. That'll snap it to your middle of your object. And now if you hit this world button, if we turn on our floor, if we hit this world, this little house button here, that'll snap it to your 000 center world. The reason why it kind of moved is because, well, maybe it shouldn't have, because this is all one subtool. This button here will move to your world center. So you can go through here, and if your object's here and your gizmo's here, you can hold down Alt, or you can go to Unmatched Center. I'm going to reset my gizmo pivot, and I'm not going to hold down Alt. I'm just going to hit the house key. It'll snap it to 000. You can also go to Deformation Unify, but Unify not only does world center, it also makes it the size of a ZBrush primitive, so it's going to scale it. So I wouldn't necessarily, do that. But that's another option for you. How would you make ripped cloth? Mask and delete masters is another trick. Let me make sure. We'll stick with cloth for a minute here since we're talking about pants. So we're going over pants. Let's get rid of those chisel marks there. For cloth, that would be something. I can make holes in this if I want to. You can freeze subdivision levels and get rid of geometry. So if I want to make holes in this, you can do like we talked about earlier about making holes with ZBrush live booleans. Did we talk about that? You can use live booleans. We'll get that later. You can use Dynamesh to make holes. You can also, if you're just going to bake it out and there's a base body underneath there, you can simply just go through here and you can just be like, here's holes in her pants. And you're going to bake this out. Of course, if you're going to solo mode, you're just doing this. You're not really making holes. But this is also a good way to make holes. And also, if you take this base body here and we duplicate this off and we do our inflate -1 trick, you can also go through here and you can use this as a way, you just crank the intensity up, to do like strings. Let's go ahead and add, tap L, lazy radius. So you can go through here and you can use this to add those maybe strings that kind of cut across here. And again, it's not great. It's just a concepty way to kind of do this. If you want to do it for real, you can use insert curve brushes to make real strings that kind of are separate, and then you can go in here and you can make this a lot better, or pilled up, or however you want to make this cloth here. Now, if you want to do it for real, like actually have holes in your jeans, in this particular instance, let's go ahead and delete this one here. Again, it's not going to work great because we have it capped, so it's not actually thin meshes. We can try it just as a thin mesh here. So if we have this mesh here, we go down to subdivision level 1, and we'll go ahead and we'll delete higher. And it's like, okay, let's go ahead and hold down Control Shift to isolate this, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, and then we'll actually make Q mesh, polygroup all, a thin jeans mesh, and then we want to poke holes in here. I'm going to hold down Alt to kind of push through. We'll do Q mesh, polygroup all, just pull that back, and now we've got a hole in our jeans. So as we're subdividing, we'll have geometry that we can kind of go through, and we can snake hook this stuff down and kind of make it whatever kind of genes that we want. So we'll have an actual hole in our genes. If at any point you were subdividing this up, so let's say we were subdividing this mesh. Let's do that. So we're going subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. We're sculpting on our mesh here. We're going to standard brush, and we're sculpting our pants, and we're happy, and we're like, oh, you know what? I wish I had a hole in this. What you can do is you can hit free subdivision levels. That'll go to subdivision level 1, and now you can do whatever you want. You can make insert mesh brushes. You can go through here. You can do like insert edge loops if you want to, any number of things you want to do. But if you do go through here and you do Q-mesh a hole backwards, and then you unfreeze, what that's going to do is bring your subdivision levels back and then update your geometry. It might not be perfect, but it'll give you something. And then now you have a hole in your pants that you can go through and do whatever you want to. So a lot of different ways you can do that. And because we're talking about cloth a lot, let's go ahead and say we want to do some details here. So again, you can take your Damien standard, you can cut a seam across here, but what do you want to do, like jeans puckering? Let's go out of edit mode here. Let's grab our plain 3D. Go into edit mode. Let's make this, we can make this a polymesh 3D. If you want just a single plane, you could go to initialize and do that, or you can just do reconstruct your subdivision history down to nothing, delete higher. I'm going to make this a little bit thinner, and then to make this a little bit more evenly quadded, I'm going to go to insert multiple edge loops, and we'll just toss in some evenly spaced quads. Hit Control W. It's all creased, so I'm going to go to geometry crease and then do uncrease all, and now I've got a nice quadded out shape. There's a lot of different ways you could ZRemesh this. You can do a unified skin, but this is easy enough. So now, let's make a jeans puckering texture. So what I'm going to do is when I'm in geometry, I hit Control D. That's going to average my vertices. It kind of makes the edges kind of melt. So I'm going to turn smooth modifier off, hit divide, 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 and now I can start making a jeans puckering texture. So one way I can do that, I can hold down Control. Let's hold down Control on this one. Control tap to invert that. I'm going to hold down Alt and grab this right here. I'm going to go in through here, this top, and just kind of rotate that out so we can get a nice straight line through here. And then that'll give me just a line down through this. We can also go through here when we can use scale. So that'll give me a little overlap here. So now as I hit continue to divide this up, actually we can go ahead and turn, once we've divided it up a bit, I don't mind going back, turning smooth back on. And now we can go through here and we can actually use smooth, and we can just dial this back a little bit. So we can have like a little fold in our cloth here, and then across here, we can go in here with our standard brush. I'm going to go ahead and mask this part out. And then as we're using our standard brush, we'll have lazy mouse turned on, just tap L, and we'll go through here, and we'll just do, come on, like a puckering type jeans texture. And there's a million different ways or different shapes. Let's hold down Control and tap. We can invert that. And then on this side here, you can do like, I don't know, any smaller shapes you want to see, or if you just want to leave that alone, feel free. And then now we've got kind of a jeans pucker texture here. One easy way to grab this alpha is to go out of edit mode, go up here to your simple brush, and grab your MRGBZ grabber. I'm going to grab this out. I'm going to use a space bar, and I'm just going to grab the relevant pixel information here. We're basically grabbing our height information here. There's a couple different ways to do that. You can use a document grab, but I'm just going to grab this alpha depth, this texture. We can go ahead and turn that off. So now, if we hit Control N to clear our canvas, and we go back to our pants, and we'll go ahead and take our standard brush here. We'll go ahead and clone it off. So down here at the bottom, we have now standard 1. Dot stroke is fine. The brush alpha will grab our depth grab we did. If you use drag rect for your stroke, oh, you know what? It's going to do something weird. So if we do drag rect, that's going to drag out our stroke here. Let's do a dot stroke, and now we're just dragging our alpha through here. if we go over here to our stroke menu and we have our lazy mouse on, but our lazy step turned up, now we're going to be dragging out copies of that. But also remember, if you go in here to roll, now you can roll your alpha through. And if you want to make changes to your alpha, you can go over here to alpha, modify, and make changes. You could do blur and streaks and V and horizontal and vertical tiles. I'm going to do a flip horizontal. So when I drag out, the seam is on the left-hand side. And then stroke lazy mouse. Let's crank that lazy step down, have our roll distance set to 1, and now turn our Z intensity down, and now you can kind of roll that pucker texture through that you made. And that'll be kind of a jeans pucker texture. So you can do holes, you can do scraggly stuff, and again, you can always go back down because we have subdivision history. You can change your primary and secondary forms and then go up here and again do your detail work like so. And of course, looks like I need to go ahead and, let me see, alpha, flip horizontal. And always use reference. It's actually been a while since I made a pair of jeans, so something like this, but you know, feel free to make your own alpha. You can actually grab image information and convert that to a grayscale. You can go into Marvelous Designer and make a big simulated jeans pucker, for example. They even have a jeans pucker alpha you can borrow somewhere in their settings, but it's easy enough to make your own. So let me go through the questions here. I'm going to start wrapping this stream up in particular. Yeah, translucent shirt. Let me add that to my notes here. And then, yeah, I'm using the Wacom Intuos Medium. Hannibal says, at the update, how can you tell if the pressure setting on your stylus is no longer working? It should be fairly obvious. Like if you're not getting a thin to a thick, let's turn that off. Yeah, or like Video Nomad says, preferences tablet, use tablet to disable pressure sensitivity as well. So preferences, tablet, turn off use tablet, and then it'll behave more like a mouse. That might be a little bit cleaner. Thank you, Video Nomad, for that. Cool. And if I miss any of these, I apologize. I'm kind of going fast through these. Question, what is FACS? I didn't find it on the web. Can you help me? I'm not sure what fax is, or the context. I can look it up real quick. There you go. Department of Family and Community Services in Australia. I'm not sure what fax is. Yes, these are very skinny jeans. Made armor plates using QMesh, but now I want to make them thicker. Do I have to delete everything but the back face again for every armor plate and re-QMesh? No, yeah, if you have armor plates, for example, I'm just going to really quickly use a topology brush. Then we'll make some armor plating. And I'll go ahead and split mass points here. So we've got our armor here. And then if you're just using, I'm going to go through here, I'm going to do a crease tolerance and then hit dynamic. So if you're just using dynamic subdivisions with like a crease level 3, smooth sub of 4, and we can go through here and say QMesh, a single poly, we can go pull this one back, run another crease, and then we can, like, I don't know, slide this edge here. So you've got armor plating like this. And as long as you're using dynamic subdivisions, you're always free to go through here and be like, I want this to be a little thinner. So QMesh, polygroup all, just hold down shift, push along those surface normals, push along those surface normals. Now if it is dynameshed or it is like actual subdivision history, it's going to be a little bit tougher. You can isolate these back portions here, you can mask them and invert them, and you can kind of move them, but it's going to get nasty. So when I'm doing armor stuff, that's why I always try and keep dynamic subdivisions on for as long as possible, just so that I have the flexibility. I can do Shift D and D to go out of dynamic, and I can always go through here and I can either pull along the surface normal, or at any point I can, it's like I inset polygroup all region. You can inset a region and then Q-mesh polygroup all and pull along those surface normals there. And then D, we can crease along our polygroup there, or just run a crease tolerance. And it just gives me a lot more flexibility for armor and not have to resorting to dynameshing and then, oh, I want to make it thinner. Well, now if it's dynameshed, for example, if we go here to apply and then dynamesh, we'll get more into this later, obviously, guys. Turn on local symmetry, you can kind of try and scale it that way, or clip, it's kind of a pain. Brush settings, how to keep the brush size from changing size when zooming in and out and moving around. So that should be a dynamic thing. That should be on by default. So when you've got your clay brush, for example, and you're going through and it's like, okay, I want to make a clay brush here and a clay brush here, and then I zoom out and I make a clay brush here. See how it's the same size? In fact, let's do this. Let's go to clay brush, drag rect, do an alpha 06, crank that Z intensity up to 100. So we're going to go through here and we're going to actually make this a drag dot and make our focal shift -100. So I'm just basically dragging out this detail, and you see if I make my brush size bigger, it'll make a bigger detail, make my brush size smaller, and make a smaller. If I move my camera out, it maintains the same size. If I move my camera in, it maintains the same size. If you're not getting that, it's because dynamic is turned off. So if I double click dynamic, turns it off, and now I go through here and I'm like, okay, make it this big, and then I'm just going to make it this big, and then I zoom out. It's going to make it huge. If I zoom in, it's going to make it really small because dynamic's turned off. So make sure dynamic is turned on. You can have this dynamic to remember it per brush, so it's not global. But yeah, dynamic on should be what you're using, and that's for insert mesh brushes and stuff too. For Spectre, I'm a hobbyist, but I've been using Maya for the last 20 years. I'm no formal art training. I bought ZBrush 4 months ago. Any suggestions on a career path? That's a good question. I mean, it kind of depends on what you want to do. Oh, you know what? I kind of have something for this. I don't know if it's going to be all that relevant to you, but if I go to my blog, where's my blog? I'm going to my profile. There's my ArtStation page. And my ArtStation page is kind of a little bit more of an organized version of my YouTube channel. And there's a little bit of extra stuff in here. For example, if you go to, say, the boot tutorial, there's a little image in here. If you make this full size, you can see it'll kind of walk you through the boot tutorial like so. But also, if you go to my blog, I wish this was better organized. Do I need a college degree, motivation, inspiration, 2D versus 3D, and how to break into the games industry? So there might be some okay information for you in there. That might answer some of your questions. With the jeans trim details, it's better to have it as a separate IMM. If you can make a good IMM brush, absolutely. Anytime you can have it separate, it's less destructive. So good point. I would definitely do that if you can. Where's the custom UI located Gumroad page? That's going to be the my Gumroad page and my QBrush page. It's under the intro to ZBrush files. Facial coding system. Facial action coding system. Are you sure it's not First Assembly Christian School? Action coding system. Expressions using the facial action coding system. Text anonymize human facial movements and their appearance with face based on the system. Okay, so this is like, oh boy, it's been a while. Like I remember back when I was in college using, what are they, Phenome? The shapes, we were using Stop Staring, which I assume is still relevant. It's been a long time since I've done facial stuff. Show how you did that translucent shirt. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have enough time today. I've got to head out. But low poly, no subs, no dynamic, so proceed with dynamic subs. Yeah, definitely use dynamic subdivisions. If you never touched ZBrush and are over 30, you think it would be possible to transition from a job you don't enjoy into the games industry. For where the bodies are, you will need, So what I do on my streams is like concepty and loose. You're going to need a lot more production. In order to get your foot in the door, it's easier, I believe, to be a production artist. So if you can learn how to do a game res and UV and make props and stuff, that's probably your easiest entry. That's where the most bodies are needed. Environment art usually needs the most bodies per project. So I'd start with environment art and prop modeling and make sure you can bake clean maps and texture and do materials and stuff like that. Cool. Yes. You beat me, Mordekainer. Cool. Scott Eaton teaches that in his facial anatomy course. Excellent. Alrighty. Cool. So I am going to head out. So we didn't get very far. It's going to be a huge monster series. We'll do this shirt next, how I accomplished that kind of translucent look in ZBrush and in Painter. So on my channel on Thursday, 6 a.m. sharp my time, so 4 a.m. PST, and then wherever you are in the world, show up for that. Embroidery, pattern patches, and detailing. Yeah, let me do that really quick, and then I'll head out. All that's going to be is, for example, we go back to our pants. Where are we at? Go to solo mode. So here's our pants we've been playing around with. So boy, we've been messing with those pants quite a bit. Let me go back to, since we put that armor on there. Let's go back. Okay, so we've got a basic pair of pants here. And let's say we want to put stitches on here. Normally what I would do, I don't like doing high frequency detail in ZBrush because it's destructive as far as like through the pipeline. So if I have high frequency detail in ZBrush, I have to bake that high frequency detail out, hope that it shows up my bake max okay. I can't adjust the height at that point. I can't adjust the tiling at that point. So I do it in the texture, just less destructive. But if you do want to do it in ZBrush even for previs purposes, what you can do is you can go down here to Surface, Noise, and we don't have UVs, so we can't touch the, you see UVs is grayed out, and that's going to be a problem, but I'll show you how to fix that. If we go in here to the noise plug, for example, we can do, let's do a weave pattern, hit OK, and then in here, if we do our strength, and we do our plugin scale, you can see we can kind of start adding a weave pattern. However, it is joined with this kind of bumpy detail. This is our noise. You could say mix basic noise down to 0. And now as we do our plugin scale, we're putting a weave pattern on here. So you can kind of see we're weaving. Now on the sides here, you're going to see it's doing some very odd things. That's because it's based on, it's basically a planar projection, so it's going straight through her object here. If we turn the noise plug, you can also bring in your own alphas. You can tap alpha, and you can bring in like a weave pattern from wherever. And tile it through here in your surface noise. But if we do that, it has the edges that are bad. So what we can do is we can go with this object selected. Let's go over to our Z plugin, and we're going to do UV Master. Now there is new UVs coming out in ZBrush, if you watch that link I sent out earlier. It is symmetrical. We are going to use our polygroups. That'll go ahead and slice these tops off here, and I'm also going to want to work on clone. That'll go to our lowest subdivision level. We can hit unwrap, we can hit flatten, and now we got our UVs. It looks fine. We'll do unflatten, we'll do copy UVs, we'll go back to our working pants here, we'll do paste UVs. So now when we go down here to our texture map, we can go, and if we go to UV map, you're going to see we can delete our UVs, so we do have UVs in there. I'm going to go to Create, New from UV Check. There's our UVs. Here's our UVs. Everything's fine. Turn that texture off. So now when we go back into our surface, and you want to see the seams, you can also check seams is also another button you can click. So we can go to Surface Noise here. We go back into our noise plug. We'll go back into our weave pattern. And now, if we turn off Mix Basic Noise down to 0, Plugin Scale down, Strength up, and then we turn on UVs, now it's going to use our UVs, and now we won't get that seam on the side. I mean, we will still get a seam. It's basically the seam where the UVs are, but that's okay. You can kind of control that a little bit better. So now we have a tiling pattern. So we go in here to our Plugin Scale. We'll just make that a little bit smaller, and then strength that up a little bit. hit OK. So now we have tiling weave pattern noise. Now this is just a preview. It's what you would call a displacement preview. So if I turn that off, it's gone. If I turn it on and I mask, it'll mask it out. In fact, I can hold down Control-Shift, isolate this, mask it, and then it just goes where it's unmasked. I can invert that mask by Control-clicking. If you ever want to see your mask, if you want to have a mask but not look at it, just go to your masking options, turn off View Mask, and now you can see where our weave pattern is, so you can determine where this weave pattern is going to go. Now if you want to apply it to your mesh, you can go over here to your surface noise, you can say apply to mesh, and you're going to see, oh, it looks terrible. That's because you need a lot of resolution to get this to show up correctly. So we'll hit divide, unmask everything, and then hit divide, divide, divide. Now we're in like 3.2 million. Now when we hit apply to mesh, now it'll be real on there. But again, it's got to be a lot of resolution. You can also do unmask by noise and mask by noise. So you can do a mask instead of applying the geometry. So then you can have it masked, and then you can go through here and you can inflate through the geometry how much you want, or deflate if you'd like. Another option is if we have noise on and off. Let's undo that. So another thing you can do is you can go, oops. So we have our noise here. You can go to layers, you can add a new layer. You can go down here to Morph Target, you can store a Morph Target. So now if you did want to go to, for example, noise, apply to mesh. Let's go ahead and, oh, you know what? Dang it. Let me delete this. And let me go to Morph Target and delete. We can go Control-D, Control-D. So we want a lot of polygons here. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to store a Morph Target. I'm going to go down to my noise. And I'm going to apply to my mesh. So now that noise has been applied to my mesh here. And then I can go here to my layer. I can tap off, so now it's not recording anymore. So I can dial in exactly how much noise I want, or if I want to invert that noise, or if I want to overcrank that noise, I can. When I'm happy with this, I can say bake all, and I can also go down here, because I stored a morph target, I can go to BMO, to my morph brush, and I can morph out what I don't want. Let's go ahead and crank that intensity up to 100. Or I can hit the switch button, and I can morph in exactly where I want that noise to go. So anyway, that's surface noise. Thanks for showing up, everybody, but I'm about to head out. Vincent says, hello, Mike, I know you have a Threadripper. Would you recommend it over Intel's better single-core performance? Depends on the programs you're using. Some programs scale very well with multi-core. Some programs don't. I use a lot of cores when I do rendering, and a lot of other programs that can, like photogrammetry, that can utilize a lot of cores. So I do use those cores. If you don't, then yeah, don't get it. Like Video Nomad says, 2950X is probably your sweet spot. The 2990WX is what I have, but it's a lot of cores, but not as high a clock speed. So the 2950X is fewer cores, but higher clock speed. So that might be your happy medium if you want to go the Threadripper route. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to have more streams coming out. So Thursday, we're going to continue this exploration through my ZBrush Summit. And then I'll make a whole playlist for you guys, throw it on my YouTube channel. So Tuesdays, I'll be on Pixelogic's channel. Thursdays on mine, ZBrushLIVE.com for Pixelogic, and then Pav Mike at Twitch for mine. See y'all later, and we'll pick up where we left.